Hello, folks. Welcome to today's Quick Bite Teaching with AI series. Today, we're going to be talking about general artificial intelligence tools for William and Mary. I am joined by my colleague, Louis Hubert from IT. Louis, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Louis Hubert. I'm the what's called the AI and Innovation Applications Administration Manager here at William and Mary. Nice to meet you
And,
all.
and I am Pablo Yañez. I am the senior project manager for data technology and innovation at STLI. So, if you're not familiar with Quick Bites, they're a 30-minute format. Lewis and I will be discussing general Gen AI tools at William and Mary for the first 30 minutes. And then for this series, we're setting aside 30 minutes after the session for questions, discussions, ideas, etc. after the session. So we'll be around until about 1:30, available for anybody who wants to continue the conversation. So
Yeah.
to get started, what I'd like to do is go through a little exercise. And I think you will recognize this chart from this summer, from the confidence map exercise that we all participated in, or most of us participated in. And what I'd like you to do is, if you've never used Poll Everywhere before, you'll see at the top of this slide, there is a Poll Everywhere activity. So if you could open up a web browser, or you could use the QR code to scan your screen if you want to do it on your mobile device. But if you open up a web browser, go to pollev.com/Pablo, you should be able to respond to this question. And the question to get us started today is, how do you feel about incorporating Gen AI into your course? So, two axes. One is how certain and confident you are. That's the x-axis. And the y-axis is how much in control you feel of this process. So at the bottom left, you're kind of in the stress center, and that puts you where you don't feel very certain about applying a concept, and you don't feel like you have much control. So put yourself in in those two axes, and just let me know where we are as we get started on this, and we'll give everybody a chance to participate. All right, we've got 11. Oh, we went down somehow. Oh, we got 11 responses. There we go. So if you came in during the middle of that, you can open up a web browser and go to the pollev.com/Pablo link in Pollev and sort of put yourself down where you are about incorporating Gen AI into your classes. How do you feel about doing that? And it looks like we still have some coming in.
Excellent. Excellent.
I'll leave that up for a second. And we've got a lot to cover today, so I'm going to hand this over to Lewis about halfway through, hopefully, and he's going to walk us through some stuff, and then we're going to do this activity again at the very end. So please leave Poll Everywhere window open so that you can participate in a couple of other activities that we'll have today. All right, so it looks like we've plateaued out. So what is generative artificial intelligence? Generative AI is tools that are a type of artificial intelligence that are able to create new content, including text, images, audio, video, and a growing number of other outputs. Why does it matter? Why are we here talking about Gen AI? It's because these tools are increasingly capable of disrupting traditional learning and teaching models. These tools can both accelerate and impede learners' acquisition of knowledge and skills depending on how they are used. How do I do it? How do you implement this? Well, I would say carefully. You need to familiarize yourself with Gen AI and be able to navigate how it can serve your course's learning objectives. You and your students should be able to be aware of equity, privacy, intellectual property, ethics, and factual accuracy concerns. So just to get an idea of how fast generative AI has been growing, if you haven't seen this before, This is a chart showing how many years it took different platforms, online platforms, to reach 100 million users. So, for instance, Netflix took about 10 and a half years to reach that. Facebook took a little bit over 4 years to reach that. Instagram was about 2 years. TikTok was very fast. It was about 6 months to reach 100 million users. ChatGPT, I think that on this graph, it's actually incorrect because it was 4 days. They took 4 days to get 100 million users. So it literally is. I don't think we've ever seen anything boom as quickly as this has. I want to do one other activity before we move on, which is I would love for you to know where you are on terms of familiarity, experience with generative AI tools. Please select all of these tools that you may have used. You can select as many as you want. And just let me know what you've been using generative AI, or if you haven't been. We're going to try to target both people who have used generative AI so far and those who haven't. Oh, it almost looks like a music display, the bar graphs. So I'm not surprised to see that ChatGPT free version is the number one used tool in generative AI. The paid version, we have a fair number of people who used it. Some people have used Gemini. It's nice to see that some people are using Microsoft Copilot. People have used DALL-E for image generation, code generation tools, and we actually have a significant number of people who've used other tools. Last year, about a year ago, this would have been a much shorter list that, we could have almost included all of the big players. But now there is just such a variety of tools out there that I'm not surprised to see that a significant number of people are using different tools. I was talking to a colleague today about Perplexity, which is an up-and-coming tool that many of you might have looked at. All right, so this gives us a snapshot of where most people are. It looks about what I expected to see. I want to briefly bring up surveys that we did this past year. This was part of STLI's University Teaching and Learning projects. We had two groups working on generative AI, and we had one group of folks survey our students. They had about 700 responses. We had a different group survey our faculty, and we had about 250 responses, if I recall correctly. The interesting thing about this graph is we're asking them about familiarity with some basic concepts, if they're familiar with GenAI, if they're familiar with large language models, and if they're familiar with prompt engineering. What you'll see is that both faculty and students have similar trends in terms of familiarity, but it's interesting to note that students have significantly lower familiarity with the concepts of, for instance, large language model, which is one of the key technologies used to build generative AI, and prompt engineering as compared to faculty. When we look at students specifically, they acknowledge that generative AI is going to be important in their career paths. They are open to receiving additional instruction from faculty or others at the university about how to use generative AI, but very few say they understand how large language models work, LLMs. Again, we'll get to that, a little bit better description of that. Interestingly, even though they don't understand how GenAI is working, they feel very confident in recognizing potentially harmful or misleading output generated by a prompt. That could be a false sense of security. They also feel pretty confident that they know when it's ethically appropriate to use GenAI. On the other hand, they are concerned about the accuracy of content produced by generative AI, which is a good concern to have. Yeah. So I want to go over, I know that most of you or many of you are already familiar with these, but let me go over this so we're all in the same spot. Some Gen AI concepts to consider. Machine learning and training is, Gen AI models are trained on huge data sets. I mean, literally almost like the whole web at this point, including books, websites, images, and many other sources, possibly including your user input, what it generates for you, and the prompts that you use to generate that output. So that's something to consider. Uh, are you part of the machine learning process or not? And we'll get to that a little bit later when Lewis discusses what we do to vet apps here at William & Mary. There are ethical considerations. GenAI can produce mis and disinformation. It can be biased based on the training data and can replicate or use copyrighted material without permission. Usually that is done accidentally. But again, going back to the previous point, sometimes your input and prompts can then be used as output for other users. Some limitations: AI can generate plausible but incorrect information. This is something that we've seen. Sometimes it's called hallucinations. It can be factually incorrect information that sounds really very plausible because it does a great job of generating nice grammar, good sentence structure. It can struggle with complex, nuanced, or ambiguous text in prompts, for instance. There are some equity concerns that we should all be aware of. Free and paid Gen AI can often produce significantly better results than paid Gen AI can produce significantly better content than free AI, which means that unless you do something about it or try to do something about it, your students might be not playing on a level field. There could also be racial and ethnic bias or fail to present non-dominant perspectives in its output. And oh, sorry, I'm sorry. Lewis, I'm going to turn it over to you. So before I turn it over to Lewis, keep in mind that, especially that first one of machine learning, what you put into the models to Gen AI when you do prompts, or if a lot of these systems can now accept text samples or text to repair, whatever you're putting into those Gen AI platforms can, unless you do something about it, there are some concerns about intellectual property. Lewis.
Yes. Good afternoon again, everyone. My name is Lewis from IT, and I'm going to start out by talking a little bit about the vetting process for applications here at William & Mary IT. It's kind of easy because it's a work in progress. We're building the plane as we're flying it, and so what's going to happen is we'll have a web page that has the applications that have been vetted, and also a full policy is also in the works. However, what's likely going to be on that page and part of the process is whether the app is paid for, which is going to be enterprise, which I'll talk about a little bit later, or non-enterprise, which is just being used. We'll probably assign like a data classification to it. So we have data classification now. It's going to be in the link to it will be within the notes here. But basically, it's the sensitivity level of data that can go into the chatbot or the application. And so, like, social security numbers are an obvious thing that don't go into chatbots. Or if you do need to, like, that sort of sensitive personal data, you have to find a chatbot that's enabled for it. A few examples of ones that we are working on and that are in progress. And so Copilot, which is the web chat version, which I'm going to demonstrate later on today, has been approved. Copilot for Microsoft 365 is another one. That's the version of Copilot that is within the Microsoft applications. And so like within Excel or within Word or within your email. And that's also the version that requires a license and not the free one. And so that's the difference between those two there. In progress is Blackboard Ultra. There's an AI, it's called AI Designer or AI Design Assistant that's in there, and one that's called AI Conversations, which is like a Socratic chatbot or a chatbot that uses the Socratic method, which I thought might be tedious and cruel to someone, but I guess it helps you learn. It asks you the 6 questions of the Socratic method. Another one is a Adobe Creative Cloud. It's called Firefly. That's an image generation, and the good thing about that one is that it uses Adobe's stock images. So there's no worry about like the source of those images. Adobe owns them all, and so that's a good one. Grammarly is also in progress. There's Grammarly, but there's also Grammarly AI. They have an AI feature on top of their normal product, and of course Zoom AI, which I'm pretty sure everyone's already using, and more to come, like Perplexity. Um, and so yeah, if we can go to the next slide. And so also on the website with the policy will be enterprise versus non-enterprise apps. So I have a list here of the enterprise ones. These are the ones that are going to be available for all faculty and staff, and in some cases also students. Um, in the in the instance of Copilot, if you're 18 or over, it's there. The non-enterprise ones are available. Um, like you can still use them in your classrooms, but just know, like, so we've got like Grammarly's one, Perplexity, all the other ones. They're still available, not from IT, but you can still use them. You can still teach with them. Just know that these non-enterprise applications are ones that we don't have a contract with, and so there's no guarantee where what the company is going to do with the data, or now, or if they're going to use it in a future model. And so if you put something in, you don't know where it's going to come out. At least on the enterprise side, they've given us a little bit of a promise or a contractual promise. And so yeah, I guess. And next slide. And so next, I'm going to talk about um, Microsoft 365 Copilot. And really, it's a Microsoft Copilot. And if you are, so I'm with the poll that you mentioned, like a large amount of people that use ChatGPT. Um, Actually, Copilot is a wrapper for ChatGPT. It's the same. It's ChatGPT 4.0 is powering the current version of Microsoft Copilot. So it's the same thing. It's actually the paid version of ChatGPT that we're getting with our existing Microsoft licensing. Um, it's a multimodal input, and so you can use text, voice, or images. Honestly, it's just like ChatGPT because it also has DALL-E as well, so you can create images with it. Um, yeah,
Louis,
and also,
I
yeah,
would add that I think Microsoft sank about $10 billion from what I
they did,
recall into
they did, they
OpenAI for
did,
the development of
they did.
ChatGPT. So it really is ChatGPT 4.0.
Yeah, yeah. And so I say included with our license because it's at no cost, but it's not free because the license is paid for by us. Um, and so yeah, we've got all the languages there. I just listed them out. So in case you were curious. And so I think, oh yeah, we've got one more slide until our demo. And that next slide, I just wanted to show all the places that you can access Copilot. And so we've got the web browser at bing.com/chat. If you are using Microsoft Edge, there's something called the sidebar that slides out. That if you can also access it there. You'll see a little button if you're on a Windows machine on the bottom right. That's there. Copilot also has its own webpage, copilot.microsoft.com, and you could also have it in a mobile device. So it has its own app, and so you can find that in fine app stores everywhere. All right, and so next, I believe we are at the demonstration portion. Make sure I do this right. Okay, can you see my screen? Excellent. Okay, so we're going to start out. Actually, we're not going to start out there. We're going to start out. Actually, I will just change it. Give me 1 second. It has been too friendly to me and opened up the wrong one. Let's see. All right, I'm just going to do this one live. I'm going to open up an in private browser and go to
So
Bing.
what Lewis is doing right now
Yeah,
is you can access Copilot as anyone, but to get the full protection of our agreement with Microsoft, you have to be logged in as with your William and Mary information. So
that's
that's
correct.
Lewis has some special powers that he's trying
Oh,
to he's trying to make him look like one of us right now.
oh well, no. I just wanted to. I think I've signed into too many browsers and lost track of which one was not logged into, and so I just wanted to show you. So this is one that it's the right web page. It's Bing.com. It's the chat version, but there's no shield here, and that's how you know that you're not logged in with your William and Mary ID, with your William and Mary account. And so I'm going to close that one, and I'm sorry, the share thing is in the way, so I can't see exactly what's there. And so this one, I'm logged into with a school account, and I've got the shield here. This shield's not going to be green for everyone. It's just going to be a plain old empty shield. It's if the shield is there at all. They've recently updated it, and I've got an older version of Edge on this machine. And so that's why once you see the shield, that's when you know the protection is there. It's called enterprise data protection instead of commercial data protection, but it's the same. And so this is Copilot. It's just a chatbot. You've got your chat here, and I'm going to, so you can upload an image where it will describe the image. We've got a file, you can upload a file. And so let's start out with, let me see if I can do, there we go. I've hidden everything. I'm going to upload a file, see if this works this way. Hopefully the demo gods are with me. Oh, all right. And so that, of course, was the Constitution of the United States. And so the next thing will be, okay, there we go. And so this is all pretty standard stuff that you would ask of a chatbot, and it's just available to everyone. Another creative thing that you can do is to ask it for an image generation. So next, I'm going to ask it to generate a World War II poster, a World War II donation poster.
And if you're familiar with DALL-E, this is the same engine that
Mhm,
DALL-E uses.
that is correct. And so we should get 4 images, hopefully that look like World War II donation posters. And there they are. Notice that so lettering is also something to look out for in image generation, and spelling. And so in your prompting, you will likely have to tell it what exactly to say. Words are always a thing with Dolly. Next is I'm going to switch gears here and start a new topic and ask it. So something that could be useful for students is to create flashcards covering their periodic tables. So it can be a study aid as well. Oh, actually, is it going to go through all of them? I didn't realize it might go through all of them.
It
Never
might.
mind. So I'm going to stop it
Got
there.
100 some to go. Yeah.
Yeah. And then next one, I'm going to ask it to create questions, which might be useful. And so, like, if you have like a PDF, you can ask it to create like a question bank for you, which could save time. So yeah, I think I said 25. I'm going to go ahead and stop it there.
Thanks, Lewis. So
Yeah.
what Lewis showed you is some ideas for how this could be used by you in a class environment. So for instance, the graphic generation, maybe you're having your students do a web page, and it's not an art class. They don't need to generate spend hours and hours generating a World War II poster, but this way they can get through that task fairly quickly while still focusing on the learning objectives that you actually have for your students. All right, I have two more slides to go through before we sort of break up into question and answer. So let me do this as a slideshow. Here we go. So here are some guidelines for non-enterprise generative AI. So Lewis talked about that we have protection with Microsoft Copilot. Your data is not going to be used to train the AI. The output and anything that you upload into it is not going to be also used to train the AI or be used for future output for other people. So here are some guidelines for non-enterprise generative AI. So the first three are really no different from any other app that we would use here on campus or web platform. Do not input or prompt using sensitive data. So sensitive data is anything that's personally identifiable. That can include social security numbers, home addresses, driver's license, etc. You would never want to input or have your students input that kind of data. Similarly, the next category down in terms of sensitive data is protected data. So those are things that are protected by statutes, regulations, university policies, things like FERPA. So that could be things such as grades, faculty feedback, contact and family information, class lists, course schedules, etc. So those are things that you would encourage your students not to put into the generative AI as a prompt or as input for what you're hoping to get back. Nor should you, basically. Non-sensitive data can be used. Again, this is often anything that's forward-facing is open to the general public. There's obviously no concerns in doing that. So those are the sort of traditional data privacy and security concerns that IT is screening for when in the vetting process. There's two others that I would add. Now, keep in mind that these are recommendations at this point. There's no official guidance from the university on this. But the first one that I would add is intellectual property. So I would say when you or your students are using generative AI applications or platforms that with which you have no contractual agreements or protections, you probably should consider not adding any data, idea, or concepts which you don't want shared back by that generative AI because it's being used to train the generative AI or it becomes part of its trained knowledge. So for instance, if I was running some genetic research and I had some really cool new findings, if I would probably not input some of your research that hasn't been published yet into a generative AI platform that you don't have a contractual agreement with, or the university doesn't have a contractual agreement with, because that could become sort of part of, probably accidentally, but it could hit the public sort of space with that intellectual property. Another one is because you're using a non-enterprise Gen AI, you should probably consider your students who might be using generative AI an option to opt out of using generative AI. You might want to give them another way of participating and reaching the learning objectives that you have for your class that doesn't involve the use of generative AI. People can have lots of reasons to be weary of it. And without those protections in place, I think it makes sense to offer them an alternative. We're almost out of time. So I did want to go back to our original question. And I want to see if we moved the bar at all. So it would be great if you could respond to this question again. If you open up polyv.com/Pablo, you should be able to say where you are in terms of incorporating generative AI into your courses. Has this made you feel better? Are you about where you started? Has it made you feel more worried? So we'd love to hear that, get that feedback from you. As I said before, we're right at the hour now, I think. Yes. And uh, Lewis and I will be hanging out, and we'll start taking questions here right now. So thank you for coming. We understand if you can't hang around and chat with us, but we'll be here for a bit. Thanks.